I'm here with Paul Sweeting, an analyst with GigaOM, and you were on the Smart TV panel, and one of the things that didn't really get discussed too much was well, let's put it this way. What did get discussed was what people can get from the TV, but what wasn't discussed is what the TV might get from them. What do you mean by this?
Well, once you put intelligence into a device where it's capable of sort of functioning independent of other things that are connected to it, independently, I suppose I should be grammatically correct, by its nature, that intelligence is collecting data about what you are doing with that device. And so, we're still in very early days, I think, in the smart TV revolution. But I think one of the long-term, really interesting things about smart TV is that is not so much what you can get onto the device by using that intelligence, bringing content in over the top. It's what you can get out of the device in terms of the data, and it's a potentially rich and unique pool of data that we haven't really had access to before, which is a direct read of what is on that screen at any given time, because you can along with the basic processing smarts, you can put automatic content recognition in there, you can put metadata recognition in there. There'll be all sorts of ways to get a very granular view into what people are doing. So then the question becomes, well, who gets that data?
And what do they do with it?
And what do they do with it? What are the privacy implications of that? But it's a layer of data that we haven't really had before. I mean, your cable box, knows what cable channels you're watching, and Rent Track, which is in a lot of cable boxes, is collecting that data. It may know something about what you're doing when you're switching to another device, but if you switch to another input, the cable box, the satellite box, becomes essentially blind to what else you're doing. When you're on that other input, if you're using your Xbox, Microsoft is getting that data. If you're using your Roku is getting some of that data. Nobody has it all.
Although we talk, these days you hear a lot of news stories about Facebook and these other social media services anyway that are collecting so much data about you and using it to, among other things, target advertising. I assume this would be one thing that a smart TV that tracked what you did would also do, push ads to you based upon what you watched.
That would be part of it, certainly. I mean, that would be sort of the low-hanging fruit of monetization of that data. But there are other things that could be done with that. I mean, Netflix collects a lot of data about what its users watch and the frequency with which they watch it, and various other data that they have on you. And they use that in part to make decisions about what shows to greenlight. When they decided to make House of Cards, which was a very risky project in the sense that it had a very big budget, and nothing quite like it had ever been done in that over the top like that before. So but they didn't even require a pilot to be made or any of the normal development process that goes into big TV bets, big content bets, and they didn't do that because they felt they had adequate data on what their viewers want to see and would respond to, or at least what a substantial segment of their viewers would want to see and would respond to, and of course they turned out to be right. So there are a lot of potential uses of that data beyond simply serving up more targeted ads, although that would obviously be part of it. It would be a way to get a richer picture of somebody's media consumption diet. a more comprehensive picture of that than any particular service provider or device maker or platform developer is getting today. And there are probably people a lot smarter than myself who will figure out interesting things to do with that data. But to me, that's one of the really interesting things that hasn't gotten focused on that much with smart TV. Understandably, I mean, right now at this phase, people are focusing on what can I get onto, what can I use this intelligence for to get my stuff onto the TV. And that's interesting, but it's only part of the story, I think.
And that intelligence that would do what you've been talking about here is probably best to reside in the TV itself, because then it can monitor everything that's connected to the TV.
Right, because now it knows what's coming in through every input, whether it's the Xbox input or the Comcast input, or something else. It knows what might be coming directly to the TV if the TV is connected to the internet. I mean, it's going to if the intelligence is in this the set, it's going to know that, and it's going to know how frequently you switch between them, and it will have direct access to what is on the screen. Whether it's TV content or something else. I mean, you may be using that screen for gaming, or for viewing photographs from your smartphone. I mean, there are all sorts of things you could be doing in that screen. Nobody so far has had direct access to the data from the screen, and a smart TV potentially will have that.
Sounds a lot like, almost like internet metrics. How long did you spend on this website? How many pages did you visit? How long were you on each one?
Exactly. It'll bring that kind of analytics to the media consumption sphere.
Almost sounds a little scary. I mean, I suppose technology can be used for good or ill no matter what it is.
Yeah, and data collection is always a double-edged sword, right? I mean, it can produce a richer experience, but it can also be kind of creepy, and so there, we will inevitably have to have that debate. I think it's first we have to get to the point where we're actually collecting that data, and we're not there yet. I mean, that process hasn't happened. But to me, it seems like the logical end point of what we're all talking about with smart TV. You're putting intelligence into a device. You will be able to get intelligence back out of the device as a result.
Any idea how long before we start seeing such functionality?
Well, it will take a while. I mean, the functionality will come in gradually. It will take a long time, I think, for it to reach a critical mass where you can do anything really interesting with that data. Only because, and this is something that did come up during the panel, the iteration cycle of televisions is very slow. If it's not there in the silicon now, it may be very difficult to get it on there. There may be things you can download, firmware downloads and so forth, that would layer on that, or at least some of that capability over time. But it would be better if it were in the silicon now. Although one place I think it will come from is if the TV, if the silicon that's in the TV now is capable of understanding, for instance, when the TV is interacting with a mobile device. We'll start to get some of that data, because mobile devices iterate very quickly, and to the extent the mobile device becomes the first screen, in that it's the device you're using to acquire content that you're then flinging to the screen. To whatever degree the television, can recognize what that content is through ACR. I mean, there are lots of ways you could do that with the intelligence that's in a lot of sets now. The software to do it may not be there yet, but that may be addable.
Well, thanks so much for talking with us.
My pleasure.